I saved for 4 years and 2 months. Not a vacation, not a new car, not even the hardwood floors my husband kept leaving articles about on my side of the bed. Every overtime shift I picked up at the hospital, every weekend I covered for colleagues who had somewhere better to be, every tax refund I didn't touch, it all went into an account I called, quietly in my banking app, Mom and Dad's Future. My parents had been married for 42 years come May. 42 years in a rented duplex in Sudbury, Ontario, the same one they moved into when they first came from the Philippines with 2 suitcases, and a plan that had more hope in it than anything concrete. My father, Ernesto, worked in the mines for 26 years. Not the kind of work that leaves you feeling proud at the end of the day so much as the kind that leaves you feeling emptied. My mother, Cora, no, that name's taken. My mother, Remedios, spent those same decades raising me and my younger brother, cleaning houses on the side, making sure we never once felt poor even when the math clearly said otherwise. She kept a little envelope in the kitchen drawer labeled just in case, and I never saw it hold less than $40. That was her version of a safety net. $40 in an envelope in a kitchen drawer. They never owned anything. Not a condo, not a small lot, nothing. The closest my father ever came to property was a garden plot at the community center 3 blocks over, where he grew bitter melon and eggplant every summer until his knees made it hard to crouch. My mother used to say quietly, when she thought I wasn't listening, that she didn't need a house. That home was people, not walls. I believed her for a long time. Then I grew up and realized she was saying it because saying otherwise hurt too much. So when I found the listing, a detached 2-story in Barrie, 40 minutes from Sudbury, with a covered porch and a proper backyard and a main floor bedroom, with an ensuite because my father's knees aren't what they used to be, I didn't pause. The asking price was $489,000. I had $310,000 saved. I pulled the rest from my RRSP, took a personal line of credit for the gap, and my brother wired me what he'd been setting aside from his end in Calgary. We closed on it in February. I told no one outside the two of us. The plan for their anniversary was simple. My mother had been asking me for months to help her find a new rental. Their landlord in Sudbury had given notice. He was selling, they had 90 days. I told her I'd found a property in Barrie that might work, that a friend of mine was thinking of selling privately, and wanted a second opinion before listing. She didn't question it. My mother trusts me completely, which is the most valuable thing she's ever given me, and also, in that moment, the thing that made the whole deception feel the sharpest. I flew into Toronto, drove up to Barrie 2 days early, and spent those days doing what I'd planned for months. My husband, Thomas, drove up from our place in Ottawa separately. He took the day off, something he rarely did, and helped me hang lights along the back porch, set up the folding tables with food my brother had helped me order from a Filipino catering company in the city. We carried in the framed photos, 42 years of them, from the black and white portrait taken the day they landed at Pearson to the one from my convocation where my father is holding my nursing cap and grinning like it's his own graduation. I put fresh sheets on the main floor bed. I set my mother's favorite tea on the kitchen counter. My in-laws, Thomas's parents, Vaughn and Elspeth, lived in Orangeville, about an hour from the Barrie property. Thomas had mentioned the house to them in passing, I learned later. Not the details, not whose name was on the deed. Just that we'd been doing something with a property in Barrie, and that we'd be up that weekend. That detail, in hindsight, is the thread that unravels everything. I want to be honest about my mother-in-law because I think she deserves to be described accurately, rather than just painted as a villain. Elspeth is intelligent, she's organized, and she loves Thomas in the uncomplicated and slightly suffocating way that some mothers love their only sons. She has said things over the years. Small things, precise things, that land and then stay. That my family's situation was a lot to take on when Thomas and I got engaged. That nurses work so hard for the pay they get, said in a tone that made it sound like consolation. That Thomas had always imagined himself with more of a partner who could be present, which she said while I was working nights through our first year of marriage. I absorbed those comments the way you absorb cold air. You stop noticing after a while, but it's still lowering your temperature. What I didn't know until I pulled into that driveway on the afternoon of my parents' anniversary was that Elspeth and Vaughn had arrived at the house 4 hours before I got there. Thomas had left a key under the mat for the catering team. He'd texted them the address. Elspeth, who had apparently been following our location, shares the way some parents follow their kids on Instagram, had seen the property, driven by, decided something, and used the mat key to let herself in. What I saw when I pulled up, the back porch lights were off. The folding tables were pushed to the side. A truck I didn't recognize was backed up close to the garage, and standing at the front door, her hand on the door frame like she was holding the house in place, was my mother-in-law. My mother was in the passenger seat. She'd been quiet most of the drive from Sudbury, the way she gets when she's tired and a little overwhelmed, holding her purse in her lap and watching the trees along the highway. She stepped out first, slowly, and took in the house the way she takes in most things, carefully, not yet deciding how to feel. She made it to the front walk before Elspeth came down the steps. "This isn't a good time," Elspeth said, not loudly, but with a firmness that was somehow worse than shouting. "We're in the middle of setting up, you'll have to come back." My mother looked at her, then at me, then back at her. She didn't say anything. She just stood there in her good blazer, the navy one she saves for occasions, the one she ironed the night before, and got smaller. Not physically, but in the way a person gets smaller when they're confused and embarrassed, and trying very hard not to show either. My father, who had come around from the passenger side and taken my mother's arm, said quietly, "Is this the wrong address?" He thought he'd made an error. After 26 years in a mine, after every early morning and every late night, his first response to being told to leave a stranger's doorstep was to assume it was his fault. I stood still for a moment longer than I should have, keys in my hand. My mother's confusion and my father's quiet shame sitting in the air between us all, and the sound of movement inside a house that was supposed to be full of photos and food, and 42 years of love made visible. I walked up the front path. Elspeth turned at the sound of my feet on the steps, and I watched something pass across her face. Not guilt exactly, more like recalculation. She shifted into a mode I recognized. Gracious hostess interrupted by an inconvenient guest. "Isabelle," she said and smiled. "We wanted to get ahead of things." The space needed a bit of organizing before it was ready, and Vaughn thought, "Where is Thomas?" I said. Not a question. He just ran to pick up a few things. He'll be back shortly. Behind her, through the front door, I could see the dining room. The photos I'd arranged along the sideboard had been moved. The table was set differently. There were throw pillows on the couch that weren't mine, and a set of matching lamps in the corner that I had never seen before. "Who let you in?" I said. Thomas mentioned the key under the mat. Thomas mentioned it to the caterers. I kept my voice level. "I have spent 15 years as a nurse, and one of the things nursing teaches you is how to say difficult things without letting your voice be the thing that frightens people." "He didn't mention it to you." Elspeth glanced past me at my parents on the walk. "I don't know who those people are," she said, in a tone that was more observational than cruel, which was almost worse. "But if you're planning some kind of event, we should really coordinate." "Those people," I said, "are the owners of this house." She blinked. "I'm sorry, my parents. Their names are on the deed. I purchased this property as a gift for their anniversary. It is their house, not an investment, not a family asset, not a project that required your coordination." I paused. "And I'd like to ask you to please stop standing in their doorway." The silence that followed was the kind that has weight. My father-in-law appeared behind her, and he had the look of a man who had understood what was happening several minutes ago, and had been hoping it would resolve without anyone having to say it plainly. He was holding one of the throw pillows. I don't know why. He just was. Elspeth found her footing quickly. She always does. "We assumed, Vaughn and I, that with Thomas talking about eventually wanting a place outside the city, that this was something the two of you were planning together. A future investment for the family. We were only trying to help get it ready." There it was. The architecture of an assumption that had been constructed entirely without my input, that had quietly annexed something I built with my own hands, and reframed it as a family project in which I was a minor participant. "Thomas doesn't have a stake in this property," I said. "I purchased it with my savings and my RRSP and money my brother contributed. Thomas supported the idea. He doesn't own it. And even if he did, you don't own it." The sound of a car in the driveway. Thomas. He came around the corner carrying a box of extra napkins and stopped when he saw the full picture. His parents on the porch, my parents on the walk, me standing between all of them with my arms at my sides. He put the box down on the porch railing. "Mom," he said. "What's happening?" "We came to help set up. I texted you the address so you could come to the party tonight." His voice was calm, the calm of someone deciding in real time how much steadiness they can maintain. "I didn't invite you to set up. I didn't invite you 4 hours early. And I definitely didn't tell you to move things around. Thomas, sweetheart, we were trying to make it nicer." "Nicer for who?" "Isabelle spent months planning this. She knows what she wants it to look like." He turned to look at my parents on the walk, still standing there, my mother now holding my father's hand. Mr. and Mrs. Aquino, he said, and his voice changed slightly, softened. I am so sorry. This was not the way this was supposed to go. My mother nodded slowly. She still hadn't fully understood. I could see it in the way she was looking at the house. She thought we were there on my friend's behalf, thought this was still someone else's home, thought she'd walked into a family disagreement that had nothing to do with her. My father said very quietly, should we wait in the car? And that broke something in me, that question. 26 years in a mine, 42 years of giving everything to this family, and his first instinct when the situation became uncomfortable was to make himself smaller, to remove himself from the scene, to wait in the car. No, I said. No, you stay right where you are. I looked at Thomas. He looked at his parents. Mom, Dad, he said, whose name do you think is on the deed to this house? Vaughn was the one who answered after a moment. Isabelle's, I'd assume. Then this isn't your house to organize, it isn't your weekend project. And it isn't an investment that belongs to the family. Thomas glanced at his mother. It's a gift from a daughter to her parents, and I need you to help me put everything back the way it was. Elspeth opened her mouth, closed it. Thomas picked up the box of napkins and walked inside. After a moment, Vaughn followed. I went in behind them, and what happened over the next 40 minutes was quiet and steady and uncomfortable for everyone. I moved the throw pillows back to the corner they'd come from. Vaughn carried the lamps back to their truck without being asked. Elspeth reset the dining table after I told her 3 times where the original settings had been. Thomas rehung the photo of my parents' landing day, the one that had been taken down and left propped against the wall. My mother's face, when she finally walked through the door, is something I will not be able to describe fully here. She stood in the front hallway and turned very slowly, and I watched her eyes land on the photos first. 42 years of herself and my father along the sideboard, and I saw the moment she understood. Not all at once. It came in pieces. The photo from their first apartment in Sudbury. The one of my father holding me the day I was born, laughing at something off camera. The one of my mother at the kitchen table in our old rental, surrounded by her recipe notebooks. Isabelle, she said. Just my name. Nothing after it. My father didn't say anything for a long time. He walked to the back door, opened it, stepped out onto the porch, and stood looking at the backyard. The real backyard, not a courtyard, not a shared space, but a proper yard with a fence and a gate, and a garden bed already turned for spring. He put his hand on the porch railing. It was the same gesture he used to make on our old porch in Sudbury when something was too large to say out loud, and needed to just be stood next to for a while. When he came back in, his eyes were wet. He looked at me for a moment, then looked away. Your mother's going to need a garden, he said. I laughed, and it cracked in the middle, and I had to set down what I was holding to pull myself back together. My in-laws left around 7. Elspeth said goodbye to Thomas in the driveway. She said very little to me, and I didn't push for more. I'm not interested in dramatic confrontations or in grand apologies that don't mean anything. What I know is that the dinner happened. The catering team arrived and set up everything the way I'd planned. We sat on that back porch, my parents, my brother on a tablet from Calgary, Thomas and me, with the string lights on and the smell of adobo and pancit in the warm May air, and my mother made a speech that she clearly hadn't prepared, and that was, for that reason, entirely perfect. My father didn't make a speech. He doesn't do that. But at the end of the night, when my mother had gone inside and Thomas was helping the caterers pack up, he sat beside me on the back steps and said, "You didn't have to." I said, "I know." He said, "I don't know how to tell you what this means." I said, "You don't have to." And then we just sat there for a while. The two of us listening to the neighborhood settle into the quiet, and somewhere close by, someone had a fire pit going, and the smell of it drifted over. Wood smoke and cut grass, the specific smell of spring in Ontario. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had done something that the years would hold. Something permanent, something no one could reorganize or relocate or stand in the doorway of. 42 years of mornings and overtime shifts and envelope money and bitter melon grown in borrowed earth. This was what came after all of that. A deed with their names on it. A yard. A porch with lights. A garden bed ready for whatever my father decides to grow. It belongs to them completely, and it will for as long as they want it.